The flying ones are different than, yeah, they have them. My neighbor has them next door, and it's like I've never seen them, but I don't know what's chewing through those lines. But I'm after that. I'm right on top of them now. I've got the spray thing. There's a spray thing my husband put around some of the trees that's supposed to be a repellent. Yeah. I don't know. I think I need a pellet gun.
Our daughter had a colony of flying squirrels move into their attic when they were not quite finished building their house, and living in it and trying to finish building it at the same time. And they tried repeatedly to get them out. They found that there was a way that they could bang on the roof and scare them out and then try to seal up where they were coming out of. And each time they did that, they found a new entrance. And finally, they thought they had all of the entrances sealed. And they went off to church in the morning and came back and found that the squirrels apparently had gotten back in and couldn't find their way out and had gotten down into the house. And their cat had had an absolute massacre. And had killed off, I think, all but the last one, which they were able to chase out the door. They felt really badly because they're so cute, and they didn't mean to have that happen. They're really trying to get them out.
They're not cute. They're not cute, Roberta.
The flying squirrels are. Flying squirrels are cute.
Yeah.
They got big eyes, and they spread their arms out and legs out, and they just sail on the wind. It's neat watching them.
It's probably neat watching them. I just have this bad thing about all squirrels in general right now, but I mean, how many times can you splice something? But
flying squirrels are more communal living like that, apparently.
They are.
They're compared to a red. Reds are grumpy, I guess, But the red squirrels, the flying squirrels like to congregate together for sure.
Wow. I maybe they'll come down this way, but I make so much noise when the squirrels are around here that nothing wants to come in my yard right now. I'm very upset. I'm very, it's just you go to all this trouble and work and in the winter besides, and then this happens. It's like every week this happens.
If you're sorry, 1 minute, Kathy. If anyone is here to give public comments, please let me know in the chat. Otherwise, if you're not a commissioner, please mute yourself and make sure you're muted throughout the meeting. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I already submitted testimony and I don't necessarily have something to say prepared, but are we allowed to ask questions?
Well, today they're going to be voting on some things, and I believe Jim is okay with people making a public comment at the end. So if you had a question or something you wanted to ask at the end, or if you want to send me your question too, I can always forward it on. Sandy, what was your last name? I want to make sure I have your stuff.
Bernier, Bernier.
Okay. You already sent that to me, I think. So I'll double check and make sure I have it.
Kind of late last night. I apologize. I live in Massachusetts. I drove up to Maine. I've had a lot going on, and I just have been trying to get to the bottom of this and go to my town hall later today after this meeting when I understand more of the implications of my situation.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'll double check and make. Did you send it to my account, Gino, or did you send it to the info.abandonedroads.
I'm not positive. Do you want to put in the comments exactly where you want us to send stuff?
Yeah, I'll put my email in because I got a couple in, but I want to double check.
Okay,
I'll chat with you in the I'll chat with you in the chat. Okay.
Thank you.
Let's get the meeting underway. Before we get started, I'll just say there will be a public comment opportunity at the end. We had a public hearing scheduled at the last meeting and conducted a public hearing at that time on the draft. But we do take public comment. It's going to be limited to no more than 3 minutes per person, but we'll do that at the end. So let's get the meeting underway. First of all, this is the January 14th meeting, 2025 of the Maine Abandoned and Discontinued Roads Commission. This is a public meeting, and the public clearly has the opportunity to watch, to listen, and there will be the public comment period at the end. Let's start with a roll call. Heather, if we could have that, please.
Sure. Peter?
Here.
Tom, you just logged in.
Yep.
All right. Rebecca is absent today. Joe?
Here.
Yes. And Jim?
Here?
Chris?
Here.
Roberta?
Here.
Vivian?
Here.
John?
Here.
Kathy?
Yes.
Yes. Ryan?
I am here.
And Steve?
Here.
All right, so 11 out of 12.
And here I was concerned about having a quorum. Good morning, and thank you all for being here this morning. Appreciate it. It's important to have the maximum participation because we have to get things ready for submitting that report to state and local government. So first item on the agenda would be adoption of the December 10, 2024 minutes. A draft had been sent to each of you. Does anyone have any corrections or additions for those?
I make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thanks, John. All in favor? We have to do this by roll call vote. I'm sorry.
Peter?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Okay, Rebecca's absent. Joe?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Roberta?
Yes.
Vivian?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Steve Young?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, great, thank you. Updates and announcements. I think we all know we have a deadline to submit our report from this commission to the Committee on State and Local Government. That's February 1. I think we've got that report well underway, and I appreciate everyone's contributions. And when you pick up errors, I don't write a 40-page report without making a typo here and there or whatever, and I appreciate it when you call it to my attention to make sure that we get it right. So thank you. I appreciate it, y'all, everyone's involvement in that. Heather, do you have any updates for us?
I do not, except I have the 3 emails that came in over the last day or so, but I don't have anything else. I think we're all up to date on everything.
Okay, for those of you who have submitted written comments to the commission, we have received the emails. They have been sent to all of the commissioners this morning, and you'll have the opportunity to restate your comments within the 3 minutes at the end of the meeting. We hadn't advertised this as a formal public hearing, but on the other hand, we do take public comment, and we value the contributions from folks. We just ask that you keep your comments, when we get to that point, directed to the matter at hand and the issues at hand, and not get personal in any comments. I know everyone will be professional about it, but I just had to put down the ground rules. All right, let's get to some of the things that are before us, some of the tasks. One of the items that had been discussed was sending a questionnaire to municipal officials, and Maine Municipal Association offered to assist in getting a questionnaire on public easements, public roads, discontinued and abandoned roads to its membership. And we thank them very much. Rebecca can't be here today because of a family matter, but we did speak in advance, and we appreciate MMA's assistance in this. So we have put together a draft questionnaire, and this is something that several of us have gone back and forth on to try to refine it, and also a memorandum that would go to municipal officials so they would understand the context of the request. And we hope for as high a response rate as possible. Previous questionnaires from MMA have gotten a high response rate. So we're looking forward to that process and getting that information. We've provided to you a copy of the questionnaire as it was completed, and also a copy of the memorandum that would be sent to municipal officials. We'll work with Rebecca to get that out toward the end of the month. It won't be in time for this report, but it will still be very helpful, I think, as we go forward with our work, because this is a standing commission. We'll be working for the next session as well. Any comments or thoughts on the questionnaire and the memorandum?
Jim?
Yes, Ryan.
No comment on the actual wording. I think it looks great. Just a question. How do you wish, or how do you think we should proceed with getting this questionnaire to the unorganized territories, since they are not members of MMA and would not get that survey? There's quite a few roads in the unorganized territories that I think we should be trying to get some information about.
Ultimately, the folks who are going to be responsible for public works for the unorganized territories are probably working for the counties. Would that be right?
That's correct.
So do you, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of ignorant on how some county governments are organized, so this may be a stupid question, but do you have someone in charge of public works for example, Aroostook County?
We do in Aroostook, but I know there's probably 2 or 3 other counties that have a designated person in public works. But there's only 7 or 8 counties that have substantial unorganized territory. So maybe it would just be easier if we could have a conversation offline and maybe modify it so it's tailored to the counties and UTs, and I could send that just to those counties. There's no point in doing a mass distribution because York and Cumberland and other counties that just don't have any UTs.
Right. That's a very good point. Offline, perhaps you and I can discuss that. And it sounds like maybe the way to go would be to send it to the county manager in those counties, because that person would know who the right staff person is to give it to. But let's have that discussion offline, and we'll do this. I can formulate one memo for the counties.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Steve has his hand raised.
Steve.
Yes, I only had one thing, and that was a matter of the order of the questionnaire, and just my opinion on this, but at 17 and 18, which are the road inventory, does your municipality have a local road inventory? Those kind of questions, I think that should be put right after number 3, just after the introduction and before they start getting into the questions about discontinued road information. Just up front, I still think it's good to leave the information about DOT at the end. But anyway, just my thinking about that is kind of that to me makes more sense to ask them first what their knowledge is about the road and then start talking about the discontinued. Just my thought.
Okay, I think it worked out this way because the idea is that you ask introductory questions about abandoned and discontinued roads on 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then you work up toward talking about whether you have an inventory that includes these public easements and includes these private ways. So I think that was the idea, but you could go either way.
Peter has his hand raised too.
Yeah, Jim, Ryan, there are, out of the 16 counties, 10 of them have road responsibilities. Some, like Aroostook, Washington, Piscataqua, Somerset, have lots of miles. Kennebec has got like 1 mile. But I've got all the contact information for county managers and the road managers for each of those counties. So, Ryan, if you don't have that, you want to send it out, I can get that to you, or I'd even volunteer to send it out myself to save work for you, Ryan.
No, if you got it, go for it.
Okay.
Sounds like the 3 of us should put our heads together and we'll get that work done. Sounds good. John.
Yep. Just a quick question on the question about, has your municipality discontinued within the last 15 years? Was there significant why you picked 15 or what? Why we discussed that?
Pete and I went back and forth, and that was a compromise.
Okay.
A lot of there was a lot of discontinuances back in the 40s and 50s, frankly. And if we were going to really pick a time, that would be a time to look. But there are very few people who were around from that time period who would know anything. And if we limited it to the last 5 or 10 years, there have been very few discontinuances. So 15 was just sort of Jim was saying 30, Pete was saying 10. We've settled on something in the middle. We'll see. But realistically, a lot of these discontinuances are historical. They happened in the 40s and 50s, and we're dealing with the consequences.
Joe has his hand raised.
Thank you. Yep.
It's Joe. I'm trying to, the tiles keep rearranging, so.
I know. I'm like scanning. I'm like, who's going crazy?
Joe,
Yeah.
go ahead, please.
Well, I just had a couple of comments, and I when I first was looking at the survey here, I saw that 13% response was pretty low. So I know we've done surveys also within our programs, and just 13%. So that means 63 or 64 responded to the questionnaire. I'd be curious on the geographical area where those responses came from. I don't know if it matters a whole lot, but I think it could. And where that some areas, I know some of the questions in some of the municipalities may not have had issues or do have issues or whatever it is. I was just curious on where the extent of some of the concerns were. But if it's statewide and those responses came in statewide, it tells you a lot better than just coming from a specific location or area. Do we have a way of knowing that?
Fair enough, but I think we'll be able to see where these responses come from. We do ask for the municipality that the person is responding on behalf of. So if we have to, we'll get the big DeLorme's map and we'll put pins in it and figure out where all the responses are coming from to see if there are hotbeds of road discontinuance issues. I think we're going to find that it's more in rural Maine than in urban Maine, for one thing.
Yeah.
And and probably more central and northern than southern.
Yeah.
But
I just like to see us have, a voice statewide kind of thing. I know when we do surveys, we would like to get information from all corners of the state to get a better idea of where maybe either there's problems or not as many problems or concerns, and it just helps us making decisions on our end of things in our office. But anyway, I threw that out there because I don't know which municipalities responded.
fair enough. And we don't know because that was MMA's own survey internally. But we'll certainly hope for as high a response rate as possible. And we know that we have all the members of this commission and MMA as a partner and part of the commission, all working to try to get the maximum response rate. So we appreciate everyone's efforts on that. All right. So
Tom has his hand raised too.
Oh, sorry, Tom. Go right ahead.
Just real quick on, I think it's question 4 about our old abandoned discontinued roads a matter of concern for your municipality. I'm not sure how if I was filling that out, I don't know if I don't have a better way of saying it, but I'm trying to figure out, is that the road commissioner saying it's not a problem, or is that, the folks in the, it's been raised a number of times in the town by people, or I'm not sure how people will answer that or how they will see that question. But I don't necessarily have a better way of saying it, because, but that's the one question I got thinking about. Because I remember the MMA survey had a similar question, right?
Right.
And I wasn't sure when I read the answers from that, what to take from those answers. So that's all. But I don't have a better idea, but I just was wondering, how we'll use that. Significant to the road commissioner it may be insignificant to a road commissioner because there are no problems, because we've heard that a number of times. But then you have people in town talk about how it is a problem. So, but I'm not sure how we'll use that information. That's all.
True enough. I mean, I suspect what's going to happen here is that the select board or the town manager is going to take this survey and say to the road commissioner or public works director, here, fill it out. We don't know anything about this, or this is for you to fill out. And but I would think that if there are issues about roads in a particular town, the road commissioner is going to hear about it. Is this a public easement? Do you plow it? If you go into any public works garage in a Maine community, 9 times out of 10, there will be a list of roads and portions of roads that get plowed and maintained. And those that are private are not on there. Public easements, it depends on what town meeting has said. And then town ways, they're all listed. So that would be the person who would hear about it if there were issues about a particular road. So that's why it still may be valid for a public works commissioner or a road commissioner to be answering these questions. But that's just my thought, and I would welcome anyone else's comments on that.
Roberta and Steve both have their hand raised.
I understand. I just wanted to wrap that piece up before we go on. Roberta?
Yeah, thank you, Tom, for bringing that up, because that was a question that I had too. How would it be to say, is it a concern for landowners in your community?
You're asking the road commissioner to respond on behalf of the landowners?
Well, I would think that as you said, the road commissioner should be aware of what's going on in the community. I'm afraid, as Tom is, that if it goes the way it's worded, that they're going to say, well, the community isn't, I mean, the municipality isn't concerned about it. You know, there's some landowners who are fighting over it, but we have no concern about that. It seems there should be some way to get a better idea of whether there are roads that are causing problems to the people, not necessarily to the roads that are causing problems to the people, not necessarily roads that are causing problems to the people, not necessarily.
Do you have another device on, Roberta? Because it's crazy.
I don't know why it's coming through echoey like that. Should I try again? See if it comes through better?
I heard you, but it was starting to break up, and so that's why. But all right, how would we rephrase it?
Can I suggest? I got my hand up, but I'll put that in there. How about on that question number 4? Are there's somebody that's got their microphone on, I guess what it is. How about if there are matters of concern that have required the board of select persons to be involved? Could you hear me, everybody?
The road commissioner might not be aware of what's going on at the select board level. Maybe you could say, are you aware whether abandoned and discontinued roads are a matter of concern in your municipality? And if so, is that concern significant, occasional, rare, or not at all? Because
you're saying it depends on who fills out this questionnaire, whether or not they would know if the board of selectmen in the community would have been involved in any issues. You wouldn't say that. You're saying that they would not necessarily know that. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Well, there's a separation of responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
If there's an abandoned road, a road that may be abandoned, it's the select board that holds the public hearing and makes a determination whether it's presumed abandoned under statute.
Right.
And all the road commissioner knows is, well, you plow this road and you don't plow the other, or you take care of this road but not this section of the old Katsapicas road. So they're somewhat in silos. You don't expect the road commissioner is going to be at every select board meeting and know everything of what's going on. But if someone's upset about a road, they're going to go see the road commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if rephrasing it to say, are you aware whether old, abandoned, and discontinued roads are a matter of concern in your municipality? And if so, is that level of concern significant, occasional, rare, or not at all?
Jim, to narrow it down a little more, why don't you just say, has it been a matter of concern to your select board or council? That way the road commissioner, all he has to do is he has to answer for the board, and he's just going to pass it on to someone else.
And Tom has his hand up too.
Okay, Tom?
Jim, I think I like your idea about areas of, are there concerns? Are you aware of concerns? And I didn't mean to start this off into, take too much time on this one but you could say something like, are you aware of concerns about old abandoned or discontinued roads from municipal officials or landowners in your municipality or something like that? So then you can, you're just asking, are you aware? And if so, how important is it or something like that? You just get a sense whether there's some conflict or not. You're not getting the details about where the conflict is, but we're getting an idea that somebody's aggrieved or not. It may come back, no, there aren't any issues. So something like that might be helpful.
Are you aware of concerns by landowners or town officials regarding abandoned and discontinued roads in your municipality?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And then we don't even need to tease out which who's having the concern at that point, just that we are aware that in that town there's something going on. Then we have an idea how many towns where there are issues of significance.
And officials means elected or appointed, so
municipal officials, or something there. Yeah.
Does that sound good to everyone?
Yep, a small typo, discontinued with a D.
Yep. I'll work to get that one done. I've got the phrasing that Tom provided, and I'll write that out. We'll get that together. All right. Any other comments on? Do we want to take a vote on that? Okay. So will we vote to accept the questionnaire and the cover memo with the change that we've just worked through to 4, and also with the addition that I will work with Ryan and Pete to provide a questionnaire for the counties, for the unorganized territories. That's a long motion, but if someone wants to say so moved.
So moved.
Okay, and there's a second. Who's the second? I think Roberta got her hand up first. Sorry, John. Okay, so with that, let's have a roll call vote on that motion.
Peter,
Yep.
Tom,
Yes.
Rebecca's absent. Joe,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Roberta,
Yes.
Vivian,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kathy.
Just for the record, I try not to ever agree with Tom Doak, but I will in this case say yes.
Ryan.
We have a long history, so we don't have to talk about it.
Okay. Well,
Ryan
Yes.
and Steve.
Yes.
It's unanimous, motion carries.
Fantastic. As you can see, this is a consensus building commission. So thank you. Thank you all. All right. Now it's time to turn to some of the individual measures for the report. We have previously talked about draft legislation to protect the public easement so that there would be an ability for municipalities to post public easements, whether they're maintained privately or publicly. If they're a public easement, the municipality can sign them in order to prevent damage to them because of rain, icing, thaw, just like they do any public road. So it's not a requirement, but it's an opportunity for them to do that. So that's one, and we've already had a vote on that, and it was unanimous, and you'll find draft legislation to effectuate that in the appendix to this draft report that you all have. We've also already looked at the way to limit liability for people who are doing work on the public easement. And we've had a vote on that. It was unanimous, and we have draft legislation on the report. Where we haven't taken votes yet are not only the items in 6 and 7, but also with regard to road inventories, right-of-way templates, and also the change from private way to public easement that we talked about. And those are 3 distinct issues. Could I have a motion to add those to the agenda? I don't think that destroys the universe, because we have been talking about those and knew we had to deal with those. I have a motion to add discussion of the road inventory, right-of-way templates, and private way change to public easement to our agenda for today. Roberta makes the motion. Second. Catherine. All in favor? We'll do a roll call.
Sorry there. Peter,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Becca's, Joe,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Roberta,
Yes.
Vivian,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
It's unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you. If you turn to pages 20 and 21 of the draft report, we talk about options to create a road inventory of abandoned and discontinued roads in the state. This is something that the legislature asked us to do this past session. It's item number 3 on our hit parade from state and local government and from the legislature. And so we discussed that last time, and the options that we are offering, and there's no legislation on this. This is just you've asked us the question, here's our answer, here are the potential responses. They're listed at page 21. The registries of deeds could become the custodian of whatever information municipalities and counties on a voluntary or mandatory basis provide them regarding abandoned and discontinued roads. Maine DOT could prospectively add whatever information municipalities and counties provided regarding newly discontinued roads to the current map viewer feature on its website. 3, the newly established Maine Office of Community Affairs could serve as a collector and custodian of that information and of an online database. 4, the Maine State Library could compile and offer whatever information municipalities and counties provided regarding abandoned and discontinued roads. And 5, the University of Maine system could compile and offer whatever information municipalities and counties provided regarding abandoned and discontinued roads. We're not providing one answer, we're providing options for the legislature to consider and then and work from that. I believe those are the 5 options that came out of our discussion at the last meeting. And the only thing I would suggest is that on one, so that we avoid any issues among our membership, we take out the phrase on a voluntary or mandatory basis and just say the registries of deeds could become the custodian of whatever information municipalities and counties provide them. Because I know that voluntary or mandatory basis could be a sticking point and could cause someone who is a member of this commission and is unfortunately unable to be here today to say no. And I don't think it adds much to it. The legislature will do what it's going to do. So I've read those 5. I think that's what we discussed. If I put out a motion to accept those as the 5 options, taking out on a voluntary and mandatory basis from 1, would that be an appropriate motion for this commission on this topic?
Jim, let me comment on number 2.
Yep.
I did check with our data folks, and even though this seems like a simple thing, they found that would be something that would be fairly difficult and lengthy to do, as much as you may not believe that. What I will do is double check again today with that wording to see if that is something that's doable or not. And I'll let you know today or tomorrow.
All right, so the motion will be that we will keep 2 in there if DOT determines that it's technically feasible for them to do it.
Right. And has anyone on number 3, has anyone contacted any of those people? Do they even have an idea that they're being mentioned here? Or the library or the University of Maine? Or do we have to because they're just options?
I think they're just options at this point, and it doesn't mean that anyone's bound by it. It's just that these are organizations that the commission sees as possibly having the capacity to provide this, and we suggest the legislature could consider them. And so we'll throw them under the bus for now, is what we're saying.
Okay. The bus that's stuck in the mud.
They are options because they do have a statewide presence, whether that's a website or whatever, and whether they feel this is within their role, that's something that can work out with us and with the legislature, but they are options. So the motion would be to adopt 1 through 5 as options, taking out on a voluntary or mandatory basis from 1, and with leaving it to Pete to come back to us on 2 as to whether that's technologically feasible. And if it isn't, we'll remove it. And that would be the motion. Does anybody want to make that motion? Tom?
I just can a question first before we vote. If
Sure.
you can. Again, I'm sorry, I'm trying to catch up with where you've been, so maybe you've had this discussion. I would think 1 and 2 are the real practical options, it seems to me, or where people would normally look for those kind of things. And if we give the legislature 5 options, then they'll say, well, now they'll have the same debate we're having, and it will have a hard time coming up with the answer. So I'm wondering if I understand they all have statewide these all have statewide presence, but it seems to me 1 and 2 are going to be the best options. And isn't there? I'm trying to remember. There is a requirement when a town discontinues a road right, there is already a requirement about when the decision is made, it goes to the registry, right?
Right. The discontinuance certificates are supposed to have been recorded since 1959.
Right.
And to DOT.
Right. So it's a logical. Those 2 places are the 2 logical things for me, I guess. And if we were to, it might be more helpful to if we're going to report these are 2 options that we identify that those are the 2 best. But I don't know what other conversation has gone on. So.
I think you were privy to the probably the most extensive conversation on this that we'd had at the last meeting.
Okay. Well, I would suggest that we limit it to that those are the 2. Even if we said there might be these other options, but these would be the 2 most logical or something to provide a little more guidance. So.
Steve.
Yes, what I was going to say is the other options may not be as ideal, but they may be cheaper. Like, for example, the University of Maine option. There could be a way that you could work out a deal that, you could get it done cheaper than this, than the first 2 options, because in any case, somebody's going to have to do it, right? So if you could steer university activities towards it, and you might be able to get a better deal. I think that was the thinking there.
For just in support of what Tom said, I don't have a real position on the issue because we are just giving the legislature options. But when you buy and sell real estate in Maine, you do a title search usually, and you're going to the registry, and you're looking in the registry for anything of record. And so if that were also there on the registry's website, or that it's something that it would be more accessible to the person who's running down title and looking for any issues. That's all.
Certainly would be better to have a link from there, but as far as the actual entity doing the work, it's a different story.
Understood. Okay, Roberta?
Yeah, I was just going to say, how about if we say option 1 or 2 or another agency, and kind of leaving that opening if neither of those can do it, that they could find somebody else. That would kind of direct them in a narrow direction, but still leave some other options open if those don't work.
Some other agency, including but not limited to the Maine Office of Community Affairs, the Maine State Library, or the University of Maine system.
Yeah, that sounds good.
It does.
Okay. That would basically give us 3 options to provide to the legislature, and it would put the primary 1 and 2 where we're naming specific entities, saying, yeah, these folks, subject to Pete getting back to me and telling me whether or not it's technologically feasible to even do what we were suggesting. prospectively working with Map Viewer. How does that sound?
Perfect.
Okay,
Yeah.
do I hear a motion? Or
Wait,
Catherine
1 minute,
first?
I have a question, 1 minute. So I have a question. I remember the Registry of Deeds, and I remember that they have a backlog, always have had a backlog. I'm on the phone with a realtor right now. I guess realtors don't have anything to do with title search, but how long does it take to get a title search? Now, where's that gonna put us in the scheme of things? How long is it gonna take for people to
Just about
get?
every, yeah, just about every county is online right now. And whereas people doing title abstracts and title searches used to spend hours in the registry pulling down volumes and they'd have their sheets together and all.
Correct.
You can do that all on your computer. And
Okay.
in fact do, and has been that way for a while now, for about 10 years. So if you had either something on the registry's website linking to something that's provided by the University of Maine or MDOT or whatever, it shouldn't hold things up. And it would be something that would be valuable to the realtor, valuable to the attorney doing title, and anybody who's doing a land transaction would potentially have that database more available than it is right now.
Okay, but it's gonna have to be inputted into the system so that you can see it publicly.
That's right, and that's right now. There's no requirement, there's no place for this information to go right now, even if it were available.
Right, it's in the cloud, yes.
It's in the county commissioner's records. It's in the municipal officials' records. It's sitting out there, and it's not assembled in any one place.
They're trying to streamline it into the right place.
Right, we're trying to offer options for the legislature to figure out where to give this a home, and then whether it's done voluntarily on a mandatory basis, that's for the legislature to deal with. It seems to me that the municipalities would voluntarily provide whatever information they have. They've done that in the past, and we need a place to house it wherever it is so that it can then be seen. Roberta.
I think part of the problem is that a lot of this information is not in the cloud. The county records are, if you know where to look for them. And last time, I think it was Ryan who held up the book of discontinued county roads. That actually is online through the Hancock County Registry of Deeds. But that's just a listing of what book and page numbers of the county records show discontinued county roads. There's much more information that could be put into there just from the county regarding layouts and alterations of roads. But as far as the town records go, most of those are not online as far as I'm aware. The only way I can usually find them is to go to the state library and just put in a request for them to bring in the town reports from the town I'm looking for and just sit there and go through them page after page looking for discontinuance records. That's what really needs to be put online so that people have better access to it.
That's something that's not going to happen very easily, if at all. I mean, if you're going to require towns to digitize all their old records, that's a big expense and a big time soak, and that's just not going to happen. But what we're talking about is taking that information and just, to the extent that there is information that's relevant, reporting it into the system.
Right. I'm not asking them to digitize all of their records. I'm just saying where someone has gone through and pulled out the book and page numbers of the discontinuances, then just that little piece of it needs to be put online. And I've done a lot of that for a lot of towns.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim, just so I'm clear on something here, we're not talking like what Roberta's talking about as far as putting something online. That's taking a document that already exists and uploading it so you can click and link. It's different than recording at the Registry of Deeds where a book and page is assigned to a document. So there's quite a difference here in what we're talking about as far as putting things online. And as far as the registries goes, what you can find now on the registries, for maybe some are further back, but for the most part, they only go back to, I think, 1960. And that date was chosen because at the time they were moving in the direction of online. That was about 40 years back, and that satisfied title searches at the time. Now, some registries may have gone beyond the 1960s if time allows and permits. I know in our case we have not, but you know, that's going to be another issue to deal with, because some of those old discontinued and abandoned roads are not online right now because they happened before 1960.
Right. So, but what we're trying to suggest here is options to create a road inventory of abandoned and discontinued roads. It doesn't necessarily have to be integrated with the electronic system. It's just if you had a link to it, or if you had the list for each county linked to the registry of deeds.
Okay.
And then, you know, it could say, you know, Jim's Road was discontinued in 1950, before the 1960 cutoff, but the town of Medibemps may have submitted a record of the discontinuance of Jim's Road to this inventory, and so it would have a book and page number. You could still get to it. Physically, you'd have to look at it rather than electronically, perhaps, but at least there'd be a link. The road was discontinued. Here's the book and page of the certificate. Go look for it. And this would be housed on, you know, the Aroostook County site, Registry of Deeds. We're just trying to give them options for housing the inventory for whatever information, whether it's electronic or hard copy, is available for a given discontinuance or abandonment, and it would get housed in this site. Devil's in the details, and it would have to all be worked out, but these are options, and that's where you'd look for it. So again, the idea would be 1, 2, depending upon whether MDOT can do that, and I'll find out today, and 3 would be some other, including but not limited to. And the idea is just, where would you, who would, what are the options to create the road inventory? Is there a motion for that?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, John, Roberta, second. Roll call, please.
Peter,
Okay.
Tom,
Yes.
Rebecca's out, Joe,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Roberta,
Yes.
Vivian,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Motion carries. It's unanimous.
All right, thank you.
Pete,
Next-
let's hope you get it, because you set the bar high on the railroads.
Yep.
Okay. The next part would be options to create a right-of-way template for property owners to use when a local unit of government considers discontinuing the road abutting a property owner's property. You get the notice that there's going to be a public hearing regarding discontinuance of a portion of the road that abuts your property, or the road, the entire road abutting your property. What do property owners do? That's kind of technical and involved, and something that's going to change over time depending on what happens to the law. We just haven't had the time to sit down and all work on that, but that's something that we can do. We have the people here who would do that. It would be Maine Municipal Association, Maine DOT, Maine Real Estate Developers, County Commissioners, Maine Roadways. I mean, all of us on this commission really would have something to do with that. So that's something I propose we work on over the next year. We've been trying to put out the immediate fires, but I think the actual template, the nuts and bolts of what a property owner should be thinking of, a checklist to go through, is something we can start once we get this report done and work on. So I think this I suggest we kick down the road, which is what the motion would be on this. We'll work on this over the next year, but we're not ready to do anything for this report. Roberta?
I've been kind of collecting examples of easements that have been written in cases like this. So we have something to work with already. I have several examples of various ways that it's been done. So that should give us a head start on it.
Right, because there is an option for the municipality to not retain a public easement, but to encourage the landowners to work out their issues through private easements to allow access to continue and to provide for road maintenance. So that's an option and is something that people ought to be aware of, and that would be included in the template. So, okay. Tom?
I do like this. I think this could be really helpful because I think it could also, it also would apply to where there is a public easement retained, but there isn't really it isn't really necessary. And that, I mean, I see this as an advance to municipality to be able to say, here, if you can agree to this, here's a template that municipality could give to the folks and say, okay, if you all sign this agreement, then everybody has access, and then we can discontinue the public easement. So I think it's helpful, and I think it's the first step in encouraging municipalities to give up public easements where there really is no public value. And frankly, I think some of them would be happy to get out from under them. So I think this has real promise. So I think we should move ahead, over the next year and see if we can do this.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so do we have a motion to work on this matter over the year ahead and to report that to the legislature? Roberta, motion, second? Catherine? Okay, roll call, please.
Peter,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Rebecca's out, Joe,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Roberta,
Yes.
Vivian,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
It's unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you. At pages 22 through 24 of the draft report, we go through the reasons for wanting to change private way under the road association statutes to public easement. And there's draft legislation at the back that shows those changes. And some of the concern raised about doing that at the last meeting was the law of unintended consequences. And believe me, I understand that. I've been bitten before, and I think we all have. But the idea here is making this change is really just recognizing what law is. Back in 1976, when the legislature redid the roads and highways statutes for the state of Maine, they determined that what had been known as private ways were now public easements. The term public easement means all private ways that were established as a result of discontinuance, as a result of abandonment by statute. And so to continue to use the term private way leads to misunderstandings. People think about private way as sounding like a private road, when instead it means something that the public has a right to travel over. So using an antiquated term causes so much confusion. It seems to make sense to replace the term private way under those road association statutes with the term public easement. So that's what the proposal is, and that's what the law is. So I don't think that there are any unintended consequences doing that we haven't worked through already or thought about. I don't think they exist. I think it's just using the right term instead of a term that was repealed, in essence, from this discussion back almost 50 years ago. What is thoughts of the commissioners on this? Tom?
I'm trying to remember the issue. I understand the perfect logic of changing I think the issue that that my organization raised had to do with the fact that under existing law that you could be compelled to join a road association on a public easement, forced to put funding into maintaining a public easement, and then have the public be able to use it without contributing anything. Is that, I mean, that's the current law, correct?
I think that's your concern, but I think that's also what would happen under the current law.
Right. And I guess what I was hoping that we'd be able to fix that or address that issue at the same time we're changing this, because I think there's and I understand there for some folks it may not seem related, but to me the concept that I'm forced to I am clearly now forced in, there's some confusion in the language, which may be beneficial to landowners now because people are confused. We clarify it and say, yeah, you can be forced into a road association. It's very clear, and you may have to maintain it, and the public then can use it, and that we haven't addressed that issue. So that's my angst about going forward with this. I would rather see a more thoughtful addressing of that particular issue if we're going to amend the statute this way. I guess that's my. And it may not make sense to folks, and I appreciate that, but that is, it brings this issue up to the public eye, and I think it's unfair to landowners to be forced into something like that. The existing statute.
I understand. Roberta has attacked has brought that issue up from a constitutional standpoint. It's unconstitutional for a municipality to spend public funds for private purposes, so that if it were a private road, a municipality can't spend money to fix it. That violates the public purpose doctrine. And Roberta has argued the inverse, that basically it's unconstitutional to require a landowner to become part of a road association and required to maintain and repair and plow a public easement. I don't have quite the same concern. But it's a policy matter, I can see it as a concern. Think about it from this perspective, though, perhaps. Suppose there are 5 houses built on this old discontinued road where a public easement is retained. Municipality has not voted to maintain it, because they have the right to. They have the right to say, yeah, that's nice, but those houses weren't there when it was discontinued. They took their chances, and we're not going to maintain it. And town meeting decides not to maintain it. Those 5 landowners can form, under the current law, a road association. And maybe 4 of them agree, and the 5th doesn't want to be part of it. They can require the 5th to be a part of it, just as they could if it were a private road. And so having this tool available to those homeowners in that situation allows them to form a road association and provide for maintenance where the municipality doesn't, or to supplement what the municipality does. If it's, the municipality might say, we only going to do summer maintenance and you're on your own in the winter. That's the reasoning. So, Tom? Sorry, you have to unmute yourself.
I have no issue with it, when it's not on a public easement. That's because those folks that are contributing the money then control the access. And if it's if it's a private land, if it's private property, it can be forced in a road association and maintain it. As you know, the issue is we need to address the issue on a public easement of a landowner being and these landowners can already, on a public easement, they can already get together on their own and do it and maintain it, is what they're doing. And what we haven't addressed, and I think it's important to, on a policy side, is to address the issue of, well, what about the fairness of a person being forced into an association and then maintaining the road for the public, and the public continues to just use it and, unfettered access across the public easement while the landowners are forced into a road association that they don't have, that they can't opt out of. And that, I think, it just brings up the inequity for me. So I have a hard time addressing this issue as as it's stated, without also addressing that inequity as part of this solution. So I'm not sure I can support this as it goes forward until we address that issue. That's.
I ask a question?
Sure. Right.
Tom, I think I remember when you brought this up before, though, you said that the issue was when your property abuts the road that's subject to the association, but you have access somewhere else.
Well, that's certainly one issue. The other issue, the bigger issue is it appropriate that I be forced into a road association, regardless of whether I have access or not? And one of them is definitely you sometimes you don't even use the public easement. That's right, because you don't need to. You have another way in, and those people should be exempt anyway for whether it's a public easement or not. You should not have to be forced if you're not going to use it. And that should be a change. But just policy-wise, one of the frustrating parts for landowners is a municipality can let anything go on these public easements, including recreational use and people driving on them and doing all kinds of things, while the landowners stand back and watch and maintain it for the public. And that is a huge frustration. And I would prefer to see this issue get addressed as a policy as part of this overall fixing this statute, which I do understand the logic of the wording and the confusion of it. I get that completely. But it strikes in my craw that we've got this existing law that is entirely unfair to the landowners. And I would prefer to wait and solve this problem all at once and not say, we'll do it this way, then we're going to come back another time and try to fix this other issue. I know it may not make sense if you're not affected by it, but it's a big policy issue for landowners.
Yeah, well, as a landowner that lives on a public easement, it's a big issue for me when someone chooses not to pay. So, I mean, the thing here is if you address the issue you're talking about as far as the municipality letting people have unfettered access on a public easement, that's one issue. But I will never support any change to any law that says it's an option to join an association, because that's democracy. Everybody gets a vote, and the people on that road should have a vote. And some people will say yes to it, and some will say no. But if the majority says yes, then it's no different than paying your taxes, right? I don't agree with paying school taxes in a town that I own property that I don't have kids going to school, but I got to pay them, right? It's the same thing in my mind.
The difference for me, though, is if you're on a private road and you're forced to an association, fine, but you have control. But the municipality which is allowing the public access, which might be the most use of that road, is doing it, not paying into anything. And maybe if you're going to do that, if you're going to be forced in a road association, should a municipality that keeps the public easement allows the public also to join that a road association? I'd be fine with that. If you want to make sure the municipality joins the road association, because they're using the road as well.
I see. So it's not the road it's not the private road associations. It's when there's a public easement that you have the issue with, because then there's unfettered access. Okay, gotcha. That's
right. And if a municipality wants to participate as a member of the road association, fine. But they're not. And so the private landowner ends up with maintaining it for the public, essentially, and that's the unfair part. So I'm perfectly fine with being required to join a road association if it's private property, or if the municipalities are participating in a road association where there's a public easement.
Okay,
but that's not the current law.
Right. Okay.
And just to add to that, I know Roberta can speak for herself, but I know that folks who live along a public easement, even if they're not required to join a road association, are upset about having to repair a public easement where the public has a right to go over it and municipalities not contributing. So I didn't mean to steal your thunder, Roberta, but there I did. Go ahead.
Yeah, Tom, I agree with you 100%. You've said pretty much what I've been saying all along. And again, if the municipality wants to be a part of the road association and contribute what's their fair share of the maintenance because of the public's use of that road, that would change the picture considerably. Ryan, as far as you're saying that you pay taxes for the schools, even if you don't have school children, there's a difference here. And I've come up with this explanation to other people too, that it's kind of like saying, if I homeschool, then I'm still going to pay taxes for the public school, but I'm also providing all my own materials, facilities, and everything for the homeschool. Well, that's one thing. But what if you then say that because I have a homeschool, I have to allow anybody in the public to attend my homeschool for free? And I still have to provide all the books, all the materials, the building, the heat for all these members of the public who are coming to my homeschool. And I'm paying the entire cost of that and paying to support the public school. That's the situation you have when you have a public easement that's being maintained by a road association. I'm paying taxes that help maintain all the other roads in town, and not a penny of that goes into the road I live on. And then I'm paying a second tax to maintain the road I live on and allow the public to come and use that road anytime they want, any way they want. We're careful in the spring. We try to watch what the weather is going to be, stock up on anything heavy we need before mud season. And then try to go in and out on foot as much as we can, or go in and out early in the morning when it's frozen. And then somebody else comes in. I'm out there in the middle of the day when everything is thawed. I'm out there with a hand hoe draining water out of the ruts so that the road can dry out. And I've just finished doing it, and some member of the public drives in and drives out again, just joyriding. And they put all the ruts right back in and block the water so it can't run off the road. And I have to go out and do it again. That's what gets to be really aggravating about private maintenance of a publicly used road. And that's what we're objecting to.
Catherine, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. My thought on that, and I've written down some notes. Either the town should be involved. It's roads in their town. The town should be involved. Either they put a small stipend aside, which is hard for a town to do on these public easements, or they do in-kind work. This is, and I know I've mentioned this before, but I actually truly believe that passing a grader once, or whatever you call those things that grade the road, if you do that in kind once, it makes a big difference. I mean, granted, I live on a private road, but we still have someone come in and grade it. If the town could do that, instead of putting the money aside, the town has to become involved in these roads because it is part of their towns. We're talking one or two, in most places, one or two roads. I think mine has 2 roads that are involved in winter closure or whatever it is. But if the town needs to become involved. I mean, I'm not one that agrees with Roberta all the time, but I appreciate what she has to say about the work that they put in, and then someone comes along and does that. So if it's going to be a public easement, I believe that the town should become involved in some way, in kind or monetarily. That's just my thought on this.
Okay, thank you. Here's my suggestion. We have this proposal in front of us to make the change. Let's take a vote on the proposal. I know how it's going to come out. That's fine. There will be some folks who oppose it, and I think that leaves the opportunity to work on this over the next year, so that maybe there's something that's more nuanced that can go to the legislature in next year's report. But we have the proposal that we've worked through the committee process, and it's come to here. Can we take a vote on it? The motion would be to approve the change from private way to public easement as proposed. And who would like to make that motion?
I think Tom has his hand up. I don't know if he had another comment.
Tom?
Well, I just wanted to say that I'd be fully in favor of this if one of two things happen. One, that we somehow make municipalities a partner in the maintenance, that if you're required to join an association, that the municipality become a partner in that in some way, or we say this doesn't apply to roads where there's a public easement retained. Otherwise than that, I can't support it. So that I just want to make sure I'm trying to, there are a couple of options. Neither of those are probably acceptable, but I just want to make sure I'm not trying to be an obstruction on this, but I think we need to do some more work on it. So before we vote, I just wanted to say that. So.
No, I appreciate it. And I'm not, not taking any of this personally. This is just something where if it's not ready, if there isn't a consensus, unanimity, we're not going forward with it because we've been there before and don't want to be. We want to try to build consensus in this commission. Steve.
Yeah, I just, in this instance, I understand that Tom would like to fix the other implications here. Are we really creating new implications or are they already there? Like as far as like what Tom's been talking about, these options. I mean, are we really proposing anything new here or is this already in place? I thought this name change had no effect.
My personal opinion, I'm not the lawyer for this group. I am a lawyer who is on this, but I am not your lawyer. I think Vivian may understand that what I'm trying to get across here. But my own opinion is that this is just a name change. But Tom, I think reasonably brings out that the name change may create more visibility for this concept of a public easement and what it means, and may encourage more people who live along a public easement to investigate this, or may cause, to the detriment of landowners who don't want to be part of a road association. And so if that's a concern, I understand. And if you want to say this needs more fine tuning in order to make sure that no one's unintentionally harmed, that's your prerogative. We want unanimity on this or else it's not going to go forward. And so if we just bring it to a vote, and if you're not in favor, I understand it. It leaves this open for further discussion down the road, so to speak. Catherine. You have to unmute yourself.
Still muted, Kathy.
Here we go.
Okay. Wow. So as it's worded in here, it's very good. The only thing is it possible to put somewhere in here where the town picks up some of the liability for this easement? Is that just not something we can possibly do at this point in time? And just because they pick up some responsibility doesn't mean they pay out money. It means, like I said, they can do in-kind services. Even if it's just once a year, it's better than what they're doing now. But is there any way to put some responsibility back to the town if this is a public easement? Just a question.
Well, you can do it. You can do anything. But I can tell you that I think that towns and counties would probably oppose that, because even if it's in kind, somebody has to pay for the use of the equipment and for the time of the person doing the work and for the materials that are used. And so that then becomes a state mandate on local governments. And that's something that I think local governments would oppose. Here's what we could do. We could either just take a quick vote on, I think we understand there are some differences of opinion here. You could either bring a motion to amend what's on the floor, to amend this right now and see where that winds up, or just vote up or down on what's there, knowing that there are some concerns that need to be addressed that probably can't be addressed right now in this meeting. It might take a period of time and the next year to work through. What's the commission's pleasure?
I'd be happy to. I understand what you're saying, Jim, and it probably doesn't matter either way. But maybe we take a vote on the original one, but then I'm sure that won't go. And then maybe we take a vote on making all the changes except, removing the part related to, public easements, that we changed the statute, but that's probably, why don't we just take an up and down vote on this and know we've got to fix it in the future? Probably we're going to waste time on something that is not going to happen. So I'm happy straight up and down vote on this one. And then with the understanding that if I'm the only one objecting, I'm certainly willing to work and see if we can't fix this.
Won't be living in himself.
Can I just say that I also would not be voting for it, but if we can make a commitment that this is something we're going to work on in the next year, I'd be happier.
But I think the idea would be that if it doesn't get unanimity, it's something that would be on our work, our chart to work on. Steve?
I'm just wondering how we could ever solve it, though. I mean, to me, it's like a circular thing that municipality, you're not going to get it if there is a financial commitment or in-kind commitment from the municipalities. So I don't see how it's going to ever get fixed. You can talk about it, continue talking about it, it'll still be an impasse.
Well, maybe the whole idea of private road associations gets limited to private gets limited to private roads.
Right. That'd be great.
It would and it wouldn't. If you were one of 5 people living along with a house along a public easement and your neighbors don't want to contribute, you're doing all the work and the public's going over it, you'd at least like to be able to work with your neighbors and create a road association.
It would be nice to do so, but again, if you build on an abandoned road, I think you should lower your expectations and not expect, again, like has been discussed many times, suddenly all these things to appear suddenly because you want to live there and you bought a house at a good deal, and expect them to come get you if you got a problem.
Well, maybe you make road associations an option, but not mandatory on public easements as opposed to on private roads. But that's on the fly. I'm not going to make that motion because we're not ready to put language, but that's a thought that you might pursue over the next year.
Okay, I can understand that. Thank you.
Yep.
So, okay, and we go across the top, Catherine, and then John, and then Roberta. Catherine.
So I have spoken to a couple small towns, and they already do this for the people that are on what they consider not primary roads. They already go in and help them either by grading or like that. So I know it's probably not going to be possible for all towns to do this, but if your small towns can do it and absorb this cost, I guess I don't understand why the bigger town can't do that. We're not talking, maybe in Ryan's neck of the woods, there's more than 2 or 3 roads in a town that are like this, but the towns that I've spoke to, they already do this. They already help the people. And again, I don't want to hop on this, but we do want to make sure we can get to these people in case of emergency. And they don't always know when they buy, because the realtor doesn't know. They don't know they're buying on an abandoned road. This is what the problem has been, the problem that's been existing, the problem that we're trying to solve in some aspect of this. So I just know that there are some towns that I've spoken to, conversationally wise, that already do this to make sure they can get to their people, and fire departments that I've spoken to that do this so they can get to their people. That's my take on this. Granted, not all people are going to say that. They chose what they wanted to do by buying there, but they don't always know when they're there that they bought on that. So that's just my thought on this. It has work to do.
John?
Good work, Catherine. I agree, but also Rebecca's going to want to weigh in heavily on this, and she's not here.
And you've all seen what Rebecca sent, and I think it's a fair statement of MMA's general position that if you're going to require mandate that municipalities spend money on this, the MMA is going to have something to say on it. It has a legislative policy committee, and I am quite sure they'd be opposing that sort of thing. So given that, it probably, you know, I favor the idea of us bring this policy position up, private way to public easement, and vote on it as we will. And I suspect it will not be unanimous, and it's something that will be on the desk for this commission over the next year to work on. Roberta?
Just a quick suggestion for something we may want to consider in the upcoming year. Give the town a choice. If you must keep the public easement, you must have some public reason for needing that public easement. So what's wrong with putting in something to support it? If you don't need the public easement, or if you don't want to have the expense of maintaining it, then help the landowners to come to agreement so you can get rid of the public easement. Give the towns the choice. If you want it, maintain it. If you don't want to maintain it, get rid of it.
But it's more than just the residents that might want to use that discontinued road, right? And expect that to be able to use it, you know, because of the easement.
Which is why the public ought to be taking on some responsibility for maintaining it. How would you like it if I said, well, your front yard is where I want to have my ATV trail. I'm going to go right across your front lawn, right through your flower bed, because the public wants it and we don't have to pay for it. It's yours. You can maintain it. That's what we're looking at.
Yeah. The only caveat of that is be careful what you ask for, because if there's no more public easement, there's not only is there no public right over it, but you may not be able to get to your house. So that's a consideration, and that sometimes gets lost in the discussion.
Well, that's the key thing, right? I mean, you want to be able to get to your house. That's it. So if you build in the willy wags and it's not good access, you still have to be able to get to your house. You may not be able to expect that other people are going to be able to get there easily, you know. But I mean, that happens all the time up here. You get somebody that buys a little Amish made building or something, and for, you know, and then plops it on a piece of land and then expects to have services there when they never had any before. You know, that happens. There's a lot of sprawl up here. Roads are being created all over the place, and it's just more than small communities can take care of, generally speaking.
I don't know if Joel wants to chime in too, but also the ATVs and the snowmobile clubs do pay their fair share and do maintenance to that sections that they do have out there, especially during the times of year when they can. So they may not keep it up to the standards of the motor vehicles or the people wanting to drive into their places, but they do their fair share.
True enough, Chris. Thanks.
Yeah,
Tom?
I was going to add the same thing.
Go
if I
ahead,
could.
Tom,
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking as this conversation is going along, and I mean, it's still back to the same thing, in my opinion, is that if you're going to use somebody's property for something, you're taking on somewhat of some responsibility. And I know, on speaking for the ATV program and the snowmobile program, we run into this all the time. Let's face it, 95% of our trails are on private landowners. And without them and without them supporting the sport, we wouldn't have the sport. So in many cases, and I'm going to use the example up in Harmony, where that is a discontinued road and it had multiple homes on it. And it's also a snowmobile and ATV trail. And when we approached the town about, you know, what, getting permission, they said, yeah, well, we also approached the landowner. And when we offered to keep calcium the road to keep the dust down, also we offered to grade the road. It was only a couple of miles, and kind of worked that out with them. So the private, you know, homeowners, of course, were happy with that because they had no maintenance before. But we can, again, we don't have a endless checkbook where we could do that, but we do contribute to helping landowners and property owners and to maintain and have, you know, keep the trails, but keep them in good, safe condition. And if that means helping them with gates where they don't want them or that sort of thing, and Chris can speak on that as well, as we do that quite often. And so we're a user group, and we do contribute to the maintenance of the whole properties that we're using.
Good perspective. Tom?
I do think there's a way to not be perfect on this, but I do think there's a way to solve some of this stuff about where there is no reason for the public easement, work with those landowners and get something so that they don't get landlocked and get rid of that public easement. And then where, as Joe was saying, where there's clear public interest, there be some participation by the public toward the cost of that. And I mean, I think that's what landowners are asking for, just to be, that kind of thing. And Jim, I wouldn't lose sight of your idea about, voluntary road associations where all the landowners agree where there's on a public easement. If they all agree to participate or something, it would make it potentially voluntary. But there's a bunch of ideas here, I think, that we could, I'm interested in seeing how we can work through this over the next year and maybe come to something that makes a little bit more fairness from a landowner point of view. So,
Steve, and then see if we can move toward a vote.
Yeah, I was just a comment about like getting rid of an easement, an easement on that is not a quick thing to do, right? I mean, am I wrong on that? It takes like decades to officially get rid of it, or is there?
Well, if there's a public easement, Steve,
Yeah, right.
If there's a public easement, it's something where you could get it onto town meeting, hold a public hearing, and discontinue the public easement, and that could be done within a year and a half. So it's not. It's doable, and this is something that Roberta had brought up, and I think Tom is mentioning that as well. The idea that if you want a public easement, great, but if you don't need it, then let's turn it over to the private landowners to be able to maintain it, and they can come up with their own private easements. And it's not always that easy, depending on the ability of the landowners to share easements and what they have for property rights, but it is doable conceptually, and it's something that's been built into the discontinuance statute in recent years. That's why there's a gap of time in discontinuance to see if there's an alternative to a public easement being retained that would still allow for people to have rights. So I think there's a lot here to discuss, given these issues and concerns. So I'd suggest at this time, let's bring that up as a motion, and that would be the change from private way to public easement in the road association statutes. I'll move to adopt that change, and then see if there's a second, and we just take a vote, and we know where we want to go, I think.
I second it.
Thank you, Ryan. Roll call vote, please.
Peter,
I'm going to abstain on this for the moment.
Tom,
Jim, I missed that last comment by you. I'm sorry. Are we voting on the original?
We're voting on the original proposal.
Okay.
Yep.
No.
Rebecca's out. Joe,
No.
Jim,
Yes.
Chris,
No.
Roberta,
No.
Vivian,
abstain.
John,
Yes.
Kathy, Kathy, you're muted.
That I am. No.
Ryan,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
So I have 2 abstentions, 1, 2, 3, 5 no's, and 1, 2, 4 yeses. So motion does not carry.
Okay. So we know this is something that'll be carried over, and the commission will be looking at this over the next year. We've been talking for about an hour and a half. Do we want to take a 10-minute break and come back and deal with the last 2? Does that make sense? Okay, we're going to go off record for 10 minutes. So we'll be back at, let's just say, at 25 of, we'll come back, okay? See you then, thank you.
Hey, Jim, I wanted to thank you for taking on this thankless job of being the chair of this group. I do appreciate, this is a hard issue. I appreciate you're willing to do this. So I just want to acknowledge that before we get into anything else and before we sign off. But I do appreciate that, the way you're running this and that it's a tough assignment. So
I'll second that.
I'll third it.
So, and I'm hoping people don't see me as an obstructionist because I really am trying to solve. There are problems here we got to solve. There are ways to do it. We just got to figure out the ways to do it. But I appreciate your work you're doing with this. So we should double your pay. How's that?
Jim, you're muted.
And Kathy, good to see you. Haven't seen you in a while, so try
Hey,
not to agree with me too much.
yeah, no. And I had to go check my hair because I was afraid it was turning really gray, agreeing with you too much. So, how is our friend Mr. Williams' retirement doing?
I tried to get him to come back and work part-time for me, but he won't do it. So
You won't do it?
no, he won't do it. I'll mention him. I'll mention that you asked when I talk to him.
Yeah, tell him I do say hi.
I
Yeah,
will.
I don't. I
Catherine.
never agreed with him. Yeah.
I
So
know.
Hey, Catherine, I never complain about problems with your hair, okay?
Catherine and I were agreed most of the time, right, Catherine?
Oh,
I-
absolutely.
I agree with Steve.
Oh, John, come on, you two. You're very handsome. You're very handsome. And your
Zoom does wonders.
hair's not everything, you know. It's look at your smile, John. You have such a beautiful smile, and Steve is just handsome in his beard. That's all I can say. So
You know what's funny is the first time ever we have a change in policy that we can have facial hair. So like a lot of us are taking advantage of it, but I don't think
yeah,
it's
I
gonna,
wondered that.
it's not gonna last very long.
Chris.
Yeah.
Chris, I need to speak with you afterwards too.
Okay.
I tried to call you, but I called the other Chris McCabe. And
Oh,
yeah, and Bob found a 12-point buck on our land, and apparently we didn't know what to do. So I gave you a call to see who my warden was in the area, and the guy goes, "I don't think I can help you," he said. So it was 12-point buck, got hit by a vehicle.
It's a nice
We
deer.
have tons of does here, but that was the first buck I've seen in the 2 years I've been here. So,
They're having a really good winter again.
tick-free?
John doesn't like the winter right now, but
No,
I think I might have mentioned this, but last winter was the first winter, and anybody that I've talked to's recollection that the deer were not restricted at any point all winter last year in northernmost Maine.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
we're on our way
Wow.
for a second in a row. It doesn't even make sense.
how much snow do you have right now, Steve?
Oh, maybe 8 inches.
Yeah.
Not much. You know, it's,
We had a lot that 1st of December there. We had about 24 inches before
Yeah.
like Christmas, and then it kind of disappeared in those couple storms. And
that
I mean,
rain.
rain. Yeah, we're making very good ice anyway. That's
yes.
that's a good thing.
Yeah. Good
All
ice
right.
fishing right now.
We'll make the transition from wildlife to weather to roads. So let's go back on the record. Heather, are we all set to resume?
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right, we have two portions of the report to talk about. One of them is the draft minimum maintenance option, and that's at pages 24 to 25 where we have a discussion in the report. The idea here is right now municipalities have the ability to vote town meeting, town council, usually on an annual basis, whether to maintain particular public easements or sections of public easements. And so that doesn't necessarily create a great deal of expectation or longevity of expectation for somebody who lives along that road. Maybe you're going to maintain it this year. I have my house there. You might not the year after. And whether it's going to be summer maintenance, winter maintenance, year-round maintenance, there's no way to predict. And so the concept here is that the municipality doesn't have it has an option that it would vote to maintain away a public easement or a portion of a public easement indefinitely with a vote by the legislative body, the council or the town meeting, so that the town meeting or the council could obligate the municipality to maintain a road, a public easement, or a portion of a public easement indefinitely, and would specify the level of maintenance. We're saying here a minimum level of maintenance. We suggest in our report maintenance and repair intended to keep the public easement reasonably passable. Something that had been discussed by Pete and others was maybe the marker would be to permit access by emergency vehicles. But that might cause problems if there are standards out there. Then I don't know road standards, from an engineering standpoint, what's required or what the fire departments might require under codes or whatever. But at any rate, that's the concept. It's not a mandate for municipalities. It's not saying thou shalt maintain and repair year-round all public easements to this level. It is an option for the municipality's legislative body to indefinitely maintain to this standard of reasonably passable or whatever we specify. That's what's before us. We've talked about it. From Rebecca's comments, I don't believe MMA would oppose an option. Would oppose the mandate, which would be the next topic. So with that, Roberta?
This is where I think the answers to that survey, once we get it out, are going to be really helpful to know what we're dealing with. I do know that in our town, we were told flat out, no, we're not going to maintain it. Never are. We're never going to maintain that road. There was 1 year when we actually did get them to address the question. Most years they don't, but we got them to address the question and they said no. It went on the warrant again the following year. They again said no. It went on again the following year, and we didn't even bother to show up because we were sick of being treated badly at an annual meeting. And that year they voted yes. So partway through that winter, when the snow got really, really deep and we were having trouble pushing it back and it was getting to where the road was really, really narrow, we said, could you just come in with your wing plow and push it back once, since you have now voted to approve this? And they said, no, that only lets us come in with the plow if your house is actually on fire. Which, if that were what it meant, there'd be no point in it, because if your house is actually on fire, they have a right to go anywhere they need to go to put out that fire. And if they're going to wait until your house is on fire before they plow open a fire road, then by the time they get the plow truck there and get the road plowed wide enough for fire trucks to get in, it's going to be too late to do anything except maybe bring the marshmallows. We see what's going on in Los Angeles right now. It's happened in Maine before. Back in 1947, the conditions were so dry that when one place caught fire, it just spread and spread and spread, and there were multiple fires all over the state, including even on Mount Desert Island, and they burned acres and acres and acres. This is why sometimes we have trouble finding discontinuance records, because the town records all burned, because everything just was leveled just like it is in Los Angeles. Do we want to see that here in Maine, or is there something we can do about it by making sure that some of these roads stay at least open as fire roads? So, as I said, it'd be really helpful to see what the answers on that survey are, to see how many towns actually are using this provision. In my experience, it's not very many.
Other thoughts on the minimum maintenance option that we have before us? Okay, Tom, and then Catherine.
I think it's great. I think it should be an option for municipalities. I think a question, maybe this is for Pete, but I'm assuming that there's no minimum maintenance roads standard now, because what would prevent a town from saying, okay, we're going to make all the roads in our town minimum maintenance, we won't have to maintain the road to a certain standard. You know, we can't be forced to maintain the. Is that going to be an issue for some, you know, not with as a public easement, but I mean, just a town road that's now has to meet a certain standard to be a town road? Will there be towns that say, okay, now I'm going to use this not with a discontinued or abandoned road with a public easement, but just a town road that doesn't get much use? Okay, now we can just not maintain it to the same standard anymore.
I don't think so, Tom, because that law 3651 specifically says town ways, so that'll always stay.
Okay, so as long as they call it a town way, they'd have to designate if this is a minimally maintained road, which I guess they could, though. They could designate any road they want to, I guess, right?
They could discontinue the town way and make it a public easement.
Right.
And
I'm
then,
just thinking about some town, I'm familiar with some towns that like have town gravel roads now that they maintain, but to a pretty good standard. And I'm assuming it's gravel because it's not, I can think of one town, there are no houses on the gravel section. So do they then call that a minimally maintained road and just basically keep it open for the, I mean, will towns use this in other ways? I just don't know if.
They'd have to go through the formal discontinuance if it's already a town way.
Right.
So it's not like the Board of Selectmen in the town could say, okay, today we're going to designate that road a minimal maintenance road. The legislative body of the town would have to vote, determine damages, all of those things that exist today, in order for them to go in the reverse.
So are we thinking that this is only available where there's a discontinuance? Or
it's only available where there's a public easement that has resulted from discontinuance or from statutory abandonment.
Okay, because I know there's a lot of public roads that are easements, right? That are paved. I mean, there are a number of those roads are. Rebecca always says there's a whole bunch of roads that are essentially public easements, but they're town roads. Then they could be they're fully maintained and paved and everything. So.
Right. The concept here, and then I'll turn it back over to questions. The concept here is, if there's a public easement, right now, the abutters can go to the town each year, as Roberta has done, and ask, will you maintain my road? And the town meeting, or the town council, if it's the legislative body, or the city council, can vote on a year-to-year basis whether it will maintain that road and to what degree it's going to maintain it. What we're saying here is that if if there are year-round residents on a public easement, then they can petition the town to go to the town meeting or the town legislative body, the council, and ask the voters or the council to approve maintenance on this public easement indefinitely to this minimum standard. So there will be a guarantee for some period of time. Now, the town legislative body could reverse that at some point, but it would be up to the legislative body. And so it's an option that's only available on public easements where there are people who are residing along it. There are residents that, and the year-round residents. So that's the idea here. Roberta.
Yeah, Tom, to answer your question, it's sort of a similar situation to what we've suggested before, is that if public easements are such a great idea, let's just make all our roads into public easements. And then the town won't have to maintain them, but they'll just magically stay passable. In fact, that idea was picked up by the Senate chair of the State and Local Government Committee a year or two ago. I mentioned it to him, and he brought it up to the committee that, yeah, if this is such a great idea, let's just do this with all of our roads. Think how much the towns would save in their annual budget. It's not likely to happen. They would have to go through the discontinuance process to make that happen. But one other concern that I have about this is the question of whether winter maintenance, snow removal should be required as part of that, or whether that should be an option. I'd love to have it required, but I think that what could happen is a lot of towns are going to say, oh, that road is too rough, we can't plow it, and therefore we're not going to do this at all. I think that should be one of the options. In some cases, people are okay with plowing their own road. They might like it if, if the road does get too narrow, if the town could come in with a wing plow once. But what's a bigger concern is getting some gravel in the mud holes and getting the ruts graded out of it after mud season in the spring. So I think it would change the wording at the beginning to indicate that that was an option, but then further down in the way it was worded, it sounded like that was going to be one of the requirements if they accepted it as a minimum maintenance road.
If we take a look at the proposed legislation at page 37, it says that it would be a minimum level of year-round maintenance. It will be less than the standard for maintenance of townways, which is safe and convenient for passage by travelers and motor vehicles, and may include annual grading, repair, maintenance, plowing, and replacement of drains and culverts as required to keep the road reasonably passable. Now, we don't define what reasonably passable means. And maybe we say to permit access by emergency vehicles, or maybe we're just silent and this will be worked out in the legislative process.
So I like this option, to have the option idea, because that's the only way this would ever pass. When I read reasonably passable, that's fuzzy language and can be interpreted by every board of selectmen differently. Even if you had a one-lane, I'm not going to say gravel road, but a dirt road that was never really built, and it's got 6-inch potholes in it, but I could reasonably get my car home at 5 miles an hour, some boards are going to say, that's fine, you can get home. But I think the intent here is when it gets to the point where it's almost impassable, where the potholes are 12 inches deep and it's a foot of mud where you just physically can't get your vehicle through, that is where this should be. But I could see lots of select people saying, no, it's fine, you can get your car through there, which, okay, that's what we want to do. When it comes to emergency vehicles, I did talk to a couple small town fire chiefs, and Kathy, you mentioned this before, but their bottom line was, we want a road that is stable and firm that we can get our truck in, and having width and height would be desirable too, so that the brush doesn't scrape the heck out of all our trucks. But the main thing was a stable road, which to me, when it says reasonably passable, I'm not sure a fire chief is want to take his truck down a road with 6-inch potholes that are full of water. But they're going to do what they have to do, but they're not going to also damage a piece of equipment that's $250,000.
I guess my question is, if we were to say reasonably passable to permit access by emergency vehicles, will the first responders' requirements for road width and roadway depth and road base be so onerous that municipalities won't do this?
That could be, because to me, permitting emergency vehicles could be very different than just simply being reasonable passable.
Right. So maybe we take that out and we leave it to the legislature perhaps to work on what the definition is for reasonably passable, knowing that it's something that's less than what applies to town ways.
Yeah, but again, let the town decide. Let them decide what level of maintenance, if they want to allow their fire trucks and their fire chief to make the decision that some towns might say, yeah, we're going to put money into these things because reasonable passable is for our fire trucks. And others are going to say, no, we don't want to do that. As long as people can get home, we're okay. Let towns decide what it is. So okay. I wouldn't necessarily say the emergency vehicles should be in there. Let the town decide.
All right, Kathy, and then Steve.
So 100% I agree with what Pete just said. Reasonably passable is very vague. And it does leave it up to interpretation. This is why I would not leave it up to the legislature to determine that. But I would leave it up for the town's input, which is imperably important. They are the people. They are the, I don't know what you call it. They are the boots on the ground people. Therefore, yeah, if you leave it up to the legislature, then it really doesn't always happen. So that would be my input. Leave it up to the town, not that. So that's my input.
If we were to say as required to keep the road reasonably passable as determined by the municipality.
Okay, I understand that, except that I have a winter closure road, which is at some given times it's reasonably passable. So I decided I want to see what this reasonably passable is. Oh my gosh, there's no way. I took my vehicle down, which I don't have 4-wheel drive. Would I ever do it again? Absolutely not. It was not reasonably passable. But
okay, but I think we're mixing things up here, Kat. If the road's closed to winter maintenance, it's because the town has made a decision that that road should be closed on a seasonal basis, open in the summer and closed in the winter, and will not maintain that portion of the winter.
Correct, except that at the time that we went down it, the sign wasn't up. The sign has now come up at the beginning of the year. When I went down it, there was nothing. So again, there were tire tracks. I'm glad they put the sign up because that's not reasonable. A lot of people do not use the winter maintenance or winter closure signs. That being said, there's no way. The good news is there's no houses on this section. There are no houses at all. My town plows up until the last house so they can get in there for emergency. They do not do the strip of land that has no houses on it. So this is why I went down it. I wanted to see if there were any houses there and why would they close this? There is no houses down there, the portion that they closed. So that, that being said, we can, as a state, we can do better for the people that live on these roads. And that's why, you know, I'm glad to be part of this group. But we as people, and we as a state, and we as towns, we can do better to make sure that all our people are safe and their houses will be able to be accessed when something goes wrong, or when they have a medical event. I mean, this is another thing we have to keep in mind. People have medical events. You need to be able to get to them, not to go on foot to get to them, because time is of the essence. And that's just, you know, that's just all I have to say about it. I mean, I do go on about this, but safety to me is utmost importance. And that's why we as a state, we as a town, we as cities, we can do better.
Thank you. Steve.
Yeah, I liked your language, Jim, related to passable as determined by the town. I think that solves a lot of things if you put that in there, because like vague is vague, and this way they set their own things. Some towns might have access to forest firefighting equipment, for example, to access remote places. Some might not. So, you know, but I think that was good language. I just wanted to support you on that one.
We can make we can do that as an amendment to a motion, perhaps, and make that change if that works for everybody. But Roberta?
How about saying reasonably passable for residential use? That was what we had proposed originally, was that if there are residences, Kathy mentioned the road that she went down, there were no residences. And those don't need to be included in this. So it'd be reasonably passable for residential use. And that would limit which roads need to be considered for this.
Yeah,
it would also mean that that's not necessarily reasonably passable for daily heavy truck traffic. You know, roads that are in the middle of town need to be able to withstand 100,000-pound trucks on a daily basis. And they need to be able to withstand heavy traffic, you know, heavy traffic volume. But a residential road that just serves a few houses maybe doesn't need to be kept to the safe and convenient standard, but just needs to be suitable for light residential use. And that's what we were proposing to begin with.
So maybe a rephrase might be reasonably passable for residential access as determined by the municipality. So it isn't as though there's a uniform standard somewhere that would be applicable statewide. Each municipality would look at it, but it would still be for residential access. That's the purpose. Does that address? Okay, Tom?
I think anything we can do to provide as much detail as possible to the committee will be useful, because they'll struggle with the same kind of conversation that we're having, but they won't have anywhere near the background that we've already got here. So I think it's always useful to help the legislature with as much detail as you can. And there are other states that have this standard. Is there anything that we can use from some other place that defines these? Because there are other states that use it. I mean, like, is it Vermont that'd be the nearby that has this, I think? And can't we use some of that language, some that they have to define this?
That's maybe possible, Tom, but again, whatever standards might exist as far as gravel or width or whatever,
yeah,
I still think that just leave it up to the town to decide what the level of maintenance is going to be.
Yeah, the trouble is you don't have a standard then, and you have every town. I guess the question is, are we trying to provide some standard, or are we simply saying the town can do whatever it wants?
I think the difference, Tom, is what you're referencing as far as another state. Those states, or this Vermont, whoever, they actually have that as a road classification, a type of road.
Right.
We're proposing here is that some level of maintenance be performed on an existing road type in Maine. You know, so I don't think we wanted to go down the road of adding another classification of road type.
Yeah, I think the idea was to avoid another road classification, but also to give some flexibility to municipalities, because these roads might need different forms of care. Some might need a culvert, some might need annual grading, some might just need plowing, and they might even, very few, but might.
So how is this different than, I mean, other than they can do this annually now? This would simply allow them to designate that as, so they don't have to vote every year to do something on these roads. Is that, I mean, is that the result?
It's that, and it encourages that they look at a standard of what they're trying to achieve, and that is to allow, as this committee is now sort of coalescing, to allow residential access as to using these tools.
I'm all in favor of the idea. It's not an issue. I'm just trying to figure out any guidance we can provide is good, I think.
I think residential access as determined by the municipality leaves the ultimate decision for the municipality, but they're given a number of tools as to what they might choose to do to fix that road. And it encourages a longer perspective, which is probably helpful for someone who resides along that road to know that this will be in, you know, they could repeal it next year, but it's probably there for a while. And it avoids having to go back every year, which is probably most useful for someone who actually bought a house or built a house along that road. Roberta?
The current statute just says, that's Title 23, Section 3105A. It just says that they can use town equipment on public easements when it's in the best interest of the public for fire and police protection. That's not quite the same as the standard of suitable for residential use. It doesn't really say what they can use the equipment for, except for fire and police protection. So it's really vague. It doesn't say that it has to be passable. As I said, our town interpreted that to mean that they can bring the plow in front of the fire truck. Medical emergencies are another big issue. On our road, well, for example, I had a stroke about 10 or 12 years ago now, I guess. And they say that when you have a stroke, time is brain. So if I had another one, I have 2 small aneurysms that they're keeping an eye on. And if one of those should burst, by the time they get the plow truck here, it's going to be too late to do anything, and I'm going to be a vegetable. Also on our road, we had one person who had a heart attack. Fortunately, my husband had plowed the road, so they were able to get here with the ambulance. We had another person who got hauled off in an ambulance because she had bleeding stomach ulcers. Somebody else up beyond us, they were having a cookout, and one of their guests had an episode they thought was a heart attack. Somebody on the other end of our road had open heart surgery, and the week after he came home from the hospital, they came out for him with an ambulance and came in the wrong end of the road and couldn't get there and had to go around the other way. Fortunately, they got to him in time. But this is a constant thing. It's not just for winter maintenance. It's keeping the road at least open enough so that you can get there if you need to. And again, residential use is the key. As far as what other states have, I don't believe Vermont has minimum maintenance roads. They have a lot of gravel roads, and their gravel roads are for the most part maintained on a regular basis. They're not always passable all the way through mud season, but they try. And again, this is where different towns may have different resources, different abilities. So I think leaving them some flexibility is a good idea. The states that do have minimum maintenance roads, oddly enough, none of them that I'm aware of will allow a townway to be reduced to the status of a minimum maintenance road if anyone lives on it. And yet here in Maine, we have some towns that have proposed discontinuing roads that still have people living on them because, oh, well, there aren't enough people per mile to make it worth our while. And I know of at least 2 towns that have roads that are closed to winter maintenance when there's still people living on them. And another one where there was a working farm and they closed it to winter maintenance and told the landowner, in all these cases, they've told the landowners, no, you can't plow it for yourself, because there are liability questions of having private maintenance of a town way. So it's in essence a functional discontinuance for the winter. So this is the kind of situation we're trying to help. This may not be a perfect solution, but at least I think it's a step in the right direction.
Steve?
Yeah, I understand what she's saying, but the problem is, like, if you got a town like where I live in Frenchville, where you got a really small population and you have a lot of roads and taking up a lot of territory, and real small public works staff that by law have to keep the roads clear or be liable, for it. And the more sprawl we have, like I'm from up here, and there's less people taking up 4 times the space now as when I was a kid, and it's never been like a real highly densely populated area, but they move way out. And so it just becomes a problem physically and financially for the community. And it's non-tenable. So that's the core of the biscuit, the crux of the biscuit, I think.
I think when the legislature created this as a standing commission, it recognized that there are a number of issues surrounding abandoned and discontinued roads and the public easements that stem from them and all, and that this commission is going to be making incremental progress. This is something that is incremental, but we're hoping we're creating a tool for municipalities to use in certain areas. It may be that it needs further refinement down the road, so to speak. But for now, this is something that perhaps we can all agree on, offer to the legislature, and it doesn't mandate anything of municipalities. It provides them with an option that the legislative body of the town can adopt or not. So with this, I suggest that the proposal is for adoption of the minimum maintenance option with an amendment to the draft legislation and the report so that it would be to keep the road reasonably passable for residential access as determined by the municipality. I think that's the language that we might be able to coalesce on. And with that, I'll make the motion for that minimum maintenance proposal. Is there a second?
Second.
Who was the first one with the hand? I think that might have been Tom. Okay. Can we have a roll call vote, please, Heather?
Sure. Peter?
I'm okay.
Tom?
Yes.
Rebecca's out. Joe?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Roberta?
Yes.
Vivian?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Unanimous, motion carries.
All right, thank you. So we have one last one, and that's the draft mandatory minimum maintenance for public easements. And the concept here, as I understand it, and as I've drafted it, at pages 25 and 26 in our draft report, would be that if a municipality from here on out decides that it wants to retain a public easement, because there's some reason to want it, and there isn't a desire to have private easement arrangements done, then the municipality is going to be required to maintain it to a minimum level, which would be, as we've written it, reasonably passable. And it might be the reasonably passable for residential access as determined by the municipality, but nonetheless, it would be an obligation. If the municipality is going to retain a public easement, then it is a mandate that it would have to maintain it. That's how it's drafted, and I know that Maine Municipal Association will object to that. Again, Rebecca can't be here to vote because of a family matter. She's at a memorial service in Northern Ireland right now. So that's the proposal. What are some thoughts? I'm thinking that that's something that we would probably vote down out of respect, but would keep on the table for further discussion over the next year. How does the commission feel about that, Brian?
So just so I'm clear, this would be moving forward though, so that if a municipality knew up front that if they were to retain a public easement, that there would be a responsibility on them. It's not going back in time.
Right.
Okay. Well, I'm more in line to favor that. If the towns know up front what the rules of the game are, there should be no reason why, if the voters of the town choose to retain a public easement, knowing that there's going to be responsibility for it, I'm okay with that.
John?
And also if it's embedded that somebody residentially lives there, I don't think the town needs to maintain a road where there's no residents out there. That's my half a plug for Rebecca.
And this would be where if there are one or more year-round residences on for which the municipality has issued a building permit and on which they assess taxes.
Wow.
Excellent.
Okay. Tom and Catherine?
I actually think that I understand probably we don't want to vote on it because, we don't have Rebecca here, but I think that's very reasonable. I'm assuming it would be up to the last residents, not the full right of way, but maybe up to the last residents or something like that, to the minimum maintained standard or something. That it's not a mandate from my point of view, because there's not forcing the town to do anything. Just as if you do discontinue the road and you keep the public easement, then you've got a requirement. Just like you have a process to discontinue a road, you also have, it's part of the process of discontinuing the road, seems to me. So I think it's a reasonable approach, but I'm not sure we should vote on it without her here. But
yeah, I would be uncomfortable as a.
But I think it's very, I wouldn't be supportive of it prospectively, because whatever it is, respectively. Backwards. Because I think that's a whole different matter, but certainly going forward, I can't see how that's not fair to everybody. But
Catherine?
All right, so from what I'm gathering, this is a moving forward kind of proposal.
Right.
So moving forward, then we're going to do the right thing. But how does this not involve the people who are already living on these parcels of land that the town's not taking care of? Moving forward means we wipe all these people with a problem right now out. Moving forward, we'll take care of the problem. Am I missing something? That's my question. Moving forward doesn't mean retroactively. So
right.
What about the people that are already there?
That seemed to be a non-starter, and that's why this was chosen. And it not only a non-starter policy-wise, but maybe also constitutionally, because you're upsetting property rights that have been bought, sold, understood, and voted upon. So there was some concerns about the ability to go retroactively anyway, outside of policy concerns.
So this is just taking care of the problem from here on out.
Yeah, again, the commission's taking this off in small chunks and incrementally trying to address the problems. I don't think we can take care of all of them overnight. Joe?
Yeah, could I just, in respect of the people who aren't here, just make a motion to table this, and we'll come back to it when we have, because we're just going to be talking about the same things again, I think.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion to table in a second, and so that takes care of further comment on it. Let's act on the motion to table. I guess the question I have, Joe, is in tabling it, are you proposing that we have another quick meeting before February 1st when this is due, or table this and we'll deal with it over the next year?
Table it and we'll take it, look at it over the next year.
Okay. All right, so we have a tabling motion and a second. Let's have a roll call on the motion to table this issue.
Peter?
Yes,
Tom?
yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Roberta,
No.
Vivian,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Brian,
No.
Steve.
Yes.
So 2 noes, 9 yeses to table.
This is a procedural motion and not a substantive one, if you know what I mean. I know our general rule has been we act unanimously or not at all, but that was with regard to making recommendations to the legislature, so we wouldn't embarrass ourselves by opposing our colleagues on this. This is just a procedural motion, and I think even though there were 2 against it, I think this prevails. Anyone object to that?
No, I understand that, Jim. I just think that dragging this out another year is too long, but that's just my opinion.
Okay, understood. Roberta, I haven't meant to exclude you, but once we had the tabling motion, debate ended on that. Go ahead.
I just wanted to comment that I do respect Rebecca and I don't want to shut her out of this, but I agree with the sentiment that I need to put it off for another year.
Understood. All right, the main motion for all of this is having gone through each part of this, where do we stand on the draft report? I'm going to suggest, before we start discussion, I'd suggest that the motion be that adopt the report, the draft report, with the proviso that each member will get a copy still in draft form. Today's the 14th. This is due the 1st.
The 1st is my Saturday, Jim. I think.
Boy, I get an extension to the 3rd then.
You do. Mm-hmm.
All right. Why don't we do this? If you can, if everybody can get their comments to me by, I will get a clean copy out on or by the 22nd. Get your comments back to me by the 30th of January, and I will incorporate those as appropriate, into this. And I'm thinking there may be typos, there may be a small mistake or something like that, and so that the motion would be to approve the draft report for all of those matters that we have voted on are unanimous. I will provide you with a final draft for you to sign off on individually, to me and to Heather. By the 22nd, you let me know by the 28th whether it's a go, or if you see any clams or any mistakes that need to be fixed. And then I will submit that final report. It's either that or we have another meeting, which gets back to the last motion. But how do folks feel? Vivian, I'm looking to you because I don't want to violate any general policy here, but is that amenable?
I think so. I think it's maybe a little unusual, but I think if everyone's okay with it, I think we can proceed like that.
The idea is we have debated and taken votes on each portion of that report already. And there are things that we are not going to be setting forward. So I'll take those out of the report and only go with those things we've agreed upon. So with that, I think we know what's going to be in the report, but we're basically giving a final sign off to each commission member on the actual language of the report before I submit it on behalf of all of us. That's the motion. I'll make the motion. Is there a second? Okay, Catherine. Roll call, please.
Peter?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Rebecca's out. Joe,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Roberta,
Yes, and thank you to everybody.
Vivian,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Unanimous motion carries.
Thank you all. I appreciate it, and I'll get that to you in time for you to review it and get back to me with your comments. All right, we're now at the public comment stage, and we've had some issues with public comment lately. I'd ask that you be brief. I'm going to 3 minutes each because we have several people who are on here who want to make their comments, and we want to hear you, but we want to make sure that we have time to hear everybody. So 3 minutes each, please be concise, and I know I can trust all of you to not be engaging in any name calling or targeted remarks like that. We've had some issues, and we don't want those. Address the issues, please. We want to hear from you what your problems are and what the issues are. Let's focus on the issues and not on people who are participants in that process. If that sounds fair. Then who would like to go first? And I've got a little timer here that I'll use.
I see Samsung Gallery. I don't know. And I see
Samsung Galaxy S7. All right. Could you introduce your name and your town, please?
My name is Janice Velli, and I live in the town of Wellington. And I moved here recently in August, and I'm on a discontinued road. I had gone to the town to request some maintenance on my road just to be plowed out. And I specified that I didn't want anything else done, just to be plowed out. I had even volunteered to pay extra in my taxes to have it done. But the selectmen told me that they couldn't do that. They couldn't just arbitrarily charge one person extra taxes to have the road done. But their first response to me too was that you chose to live there. And my response to them was, yes, I did. I did choose to live here because we're in the midst of a crisis here with housing. And this is what I could afford. I bought this place because it was what I could afford. So the town stand is that it's a discontinued road. They said, I said, well, it is a safety issue as well. I said, there's myself and another neighbor. We're both senior women who live alone, and we're concerned about being able to get emergency, vehicles down here. And they said, well, we had this problem once before. Somebody else had a fire at their camp and his camp burned to the ground. They said, matter of fact, it happened twice because we couldn't get into him, but he has to fend for himself. And I just felt like that wasn't really a very good greeting for somebody just moving to town, more or less telling you to fend for yourself. To me, I feel that it is a huge safety issue, and that it really should be minimum maintenance on roads should be a mandate because of what just happened in Los Angeles, where all those homes burned down. We are a heavily forested state. If somebody's camp starts to burn and there's a wildfire, they could lose a lot more than what it costs them to maintain a road. We're talking you could lose an entire town. So it's the fire aspect as well as having an ambulance be able to get in here. I just feel that it's something that should be mandated. If you have residents living on a road, that we should be at least minimally maintaining the road. A lot of towns have had a huge influx in population. People have moved here. And do we tell these people, well, we're not going to build new schools for your children. We're not going to do whatever. We're not bringing in utilities. We're only going to take care of what's been done, who's been living here right along. I just think it should be something that really needs to be mandated because especially in smaller towns too, I live in a town that has less than 300 people living in it. And if the townspeople decide, well, we don't want to maintain that because you're new here. We're not going to, worry about new people moving in. We're only going to take care of those who've lived here for a long time. Politics plays a lot in everything in our lives. So that's my feeling about having it mandated. But I just wanted to say I felt that this is something I'm glad to hear that there's a committee working on it. And I thank you all for that. And thank you all for taking the time to listen to me.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Our next speaker?
It looks like Raymond Birch has his hand raised.
Mr. Birch?
Yes, thank you. I understand where the report's going, but I would like to make some comments on the definition of private road in your report. The first one where it means a private way owned and maintained over which an owner may restrict. In my instance, access to our road is over an easement, a private easement that is silent as to whether the owner or the grantor or the grantee, if you will, in that case, can actually restrict the maintenance of that road or access to that road. So by adopting that method of defining a private road, you're leaving out folks that would be in the same kind of a situation that I'm in. And then private road means a way privately owned and maintained over which there's no public right of access. I understand that means public easement, which is what you're concerned about. But when you adopt that, if you adopt that, or I suggest the legislation adopt that, you come into conflict with the recently passed 233121, which was meant strictly as a for the lending community, that would that mandates that there be shared maintenance on a private road, that you would eliminate that in 3121 if you adopt that particular definition. So that's my comments, and I understand you've got to move this thing along, but I would like to see if you could consider a different method, a different definition of private road.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And next.
Is there anyone else who wants to give testimony? I think Sandy emailed me. Did you want to talk to Sandy?
Yeah, I just have a couple of comments. My name is Sandy. I'm a Mainer, born and raised Waterboro, Maine, moved to Boston in 1996. I was fortunate enough to buy a camp in 2012 when I was pregnant with my first child. We have an association. We also have issues with the town hardly ever grading the road leading up to the association, but that's actually not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is in this town of Waterboro of over 8,000 residents, I go to the website and I do not see a road commissioner even listed as a human that I can contact. So I went to the town hall. I was directed to a Jason Champion, who's listed as the public works director. So my first question is, does every town, are they required to have a road commissioner? Because right now Waterboro is not even listing one. And I would like to see like an inventory of that. Are there other towns that don't have road commissioners? Because who are we supposed to talk to if there isn't one, right? So I went to the town hall and Jason Champion said, oh, that'd be like $1 million to open that road. I have no idea where he got that number. So I own, at this point, it's to be debated because there's a error in my deed, but that's a separate issue. Also, somewhere between 60 and 70 acres. It's a lot of wetlands. I'm on a mission to protect it from foreign nationalists, from Nestle. Everybody knows how Nestle has moved in. But I'm unclear because it's a discontinued road that was discontinued in 1934. If I have the right to open the road, if it's something where I work with the neighbors, I can't really get like a clear answer. I want to use it for conservation, you know, I want to protect the land. So I can't really get a straight answer, especially because there's no road commissioner listed. And the guy who I talked to is listed again. He didn't really seem to know what he was doing or much about the roads. My sister went to high school with him and he's a younger guy, like whatever, like, I don't know who to turn to because again, there's no road commissioner. So is there a requirement that every town is supposed to have one? And maybe it's just not listed on the website. But the other issue with these websites is when you hit like to email them, you fill out the email and then you hit submit. And then it says, hey, are you a robot? And then you say no. And then it spits you around. And then I never get any kind of confirmation email back as to whether or not they've received it. So somebody needs to be reviewing like how we communicate with our towns that we're spending all this money on taxes to employ, because that's frustrating. So I don't know if we can address that, but it's extremely frustrating to communicate with these people, to get straight answers. And that's just like my 2 cents right now.
Sandy, let me comment here that I'm looking at the Waterboro website and I see under the Department of Public Works, Jason's address, his phone number, his picture.
Yep, I've written to him. I wrote through the portal, which again, I never could see if it was going through. I've also sent him an email over a week ago. He has not responded. What is a reasonable amount of time to hear back from these people? Again, I've been a landowner here at the lake for 12 years, now I'm up to almost $5,000 in property tax. My other piece of property is over $2,000 a year. So I'm paying taxes. My kids don't go to school here. We maintain our own road here. I really just feel like again, he hasn't written me back and I know who he is. Like he was in 8th grade when I was a senior, I know him. But he was just kind of like smug and thought I was coming in to cause trouble. Like, I'm not trying to cause trouble. I'm just trying to ask questions. And he just is like, oh, that would be like $1 million. I'm like, right. I'm a nonprofit. I can raise that with grants, for my mission. But again, I don't know, again, is public works the same thing as a road commissioner? Because that's not clear. They should write road commissioner. I don't know that public works is the same as road commissioner. It's a different title.
I can answer you that every town is required to have a road commissioner, but that's a title. So in some towns, it could be the town manager, it could be a selectman, it could be your public works guy.
Okay.
And actually, the select board could be a board of road commissioners. So there are several options in Maine. That's it. I mean, our role is to help understand the issues and help work with the legislature and advise them and how to resolve the issues. So we appreciate your comments. But we can't give out legal advice on these things.
Right, and I've talked to lawyers, activists, I've talked to other people. Like, I'm just like simply saying that maybe it would be helpful for the community if it was a little bit more clear on their websites who actually deals with the roads. And then if again, these websites are extremely difficult, these portals, the messages don't seem to be going through when I write them. And again, it's me around in circles. It doesn't matter if I'm on a computer or on a phone. So it's just, I live in Massachusetts. I'm not up here full time, so I shouldn't have to go to the town hall to communicate with my people that are working for us. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a frustrating system all the way around. And I'm just that.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And is there anyone else who has a comment for the commission today?
Chris, did you want to speak?
Can I join in, or I don't know how this whole thing works as far as?
Sure. Can you give us your name and what town you're from?
Yeah, so my name's Chris Kuzma, and I am in Springvale, and I live along the old railroad trail, and we have an auxiliary trail that is public access that is private land, but has an easement to some extent. And kind of listening to some of this, and a friend of mine kind of let me know that you guys were having the hearing today. So one of my concerns is my neighbor and I share public access through an easement on private land. So if the town or nobody else is maintaining it, what happens if somebody trips on a log or gets hurt on my land through a public easement, and the liability issues? And that was mentioned a few times, but not really completely discussed. So part of my concern would be, with any changes or any legislations to easements, right away, and those things, what does a private landowner with a public easement that has been through there, like, do I have to worry? Do I have to put up a fence? Do I have to post the land and put up signs to protect myself from potential liability of anybody and their brother walking through a public easement on my land? If that makes sense.
That does make sense. And again, not to give legal advice, but just to say where the commission's been. The commission has heard of concerns that folks who own property abutting public easements, who have to maintain those public easements, are concerned about their own liability if someone should trip, fall, get hurt.
Yeah, I got a raspberry patch. I got a raspberry patch, and I stepped on a log and bruised a rib a couple years ago. So, like, if somebody in their family's walking down there, and their kid says, "Ooh, there's raspberries," and picks them and falls and gets hurt, it's a public right of way on an, I guess it's part of a land trust and a trail and the easement. But how do I know, like, if somebody walks into my property, is that an issue? So that's something else, I think. The maintenance of public easements on private lands needs to be considered.
And we have been considering the issue of the maintenance of public easements by persons abutting it, and have proposed a legislative fix to limit liability for landowners for what happens when people use that public right of access and may get injured as a result of work done by the abutter. So that's something that you'll see in our draft report. There's a proposed bill.
All right.
So I encourage you to take a look at that. But we appreciate it.
Thankfully, like I said, one of my friends sent me this link and let me know what was going on, because I have land here, but then I also have some woodlot and woodland on one of the old railroad trails. And that's another issue that comes up with easements and land, is the town of Sanford, before it became a city, when the state came in and created, eminent domain to create the railroad, the city deeded like that 50-foot wide railroad bed to themselves versus removing the easement. So some sections in some areas of this public access are town owned and deeded, where other areas go through private landowners.
That sounds like it's above our job description to try to work on some of that, simply because we're looking at abandoned and discontinued roads and not some of these other sections. But we appreciate the concerns, and thank you for your input.
All right, man. Thanks. You, everybody, for listening.
All right. Are there any other folks who want to speak with us today, Heather?
There was in the chat. There was a Janice Veli. Or did she speak?
She spoke. Yep, Janice was the first speaker. Thanks, Steve.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you. Sorry.
So is there anything else that commission members have to bring up today?
Jim, I just want to say, Sandy, can you call me and I'll help you a little bit more? Let me give you my number. You got a pencil there?
I got my phone.
Okay. 207-624-3266.
I appreciate you.
Okay.
What is your name, Jim?
Peter.
Oh, Peter. I didn't know who was speaking. Thank you.
Thank you all for your work today. It's a long meeting. Thank you for your patience and for all your assistance. I'll get that draft off to you. We'll get your comments in that. We'll get that report filed. Thank you, and there's still more work ahead.
Jim, we don't know enough about all the work that you put into this thing. I know how many hours or weekends you've done. So all of us, I think, individually and collectively would say thank you for all the effort you put into this, especially all this writing and then putting up with all of us.
It's not putting up. This is a good group. I really appreciate working with this commission. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank
Have a great rest of
Thank
the day.
you. Take care.
Thanks, Al.
Bye, everybody.